This boy painted the signal red. Passing train thought it had a red light, and stopped. The boy took the opportunity to push his suitcase onto the train. He was about to hitch a free ride, but before he could climb aboard, two security guards spotted him. The boy panicked. He hid under the car, but before he could rest, the train started to move. He had to get out again. Luckily for him, there was a conveyor belt nearby. The boy used it to get onto the train. It was the first time the boy had ever run away from home. His name was Spivey, although only 10 years old, but he was a little genius. Not long ago, he had invented a perpetual motion machine, and won the prestigious Bell Prize. But when he told his father about the award, he didn't believe him. He told him to watch less cartoons. He had no choice but to go to his mother. But his mother was an entomologist. She's an entomologist and spends all her time in the lab doing research, and she doesn't give a damn about him. So Spivey was distraught. He sneaks onto the train to collect his prize, so that his parents could pay more attention to him. But only one stop into the train ride, Spivey spotted a couple of security guards heading this way. Apparently they'd been tipped off about a fare evasion. In desperation, Spivey had to hide in the caravan where he had been checked in. The guards heard the commotion and came to check. He found that the door had been locked. He then peered through the window. Strange. How did this poster get made? It's so realistic. Even the snot is drawn on it. Just then the train whistle sounded again. The guard had to jump off the train first. Spivey escaped with his life. It was still a long way from his destination. He simply slept in the car. When the train arrived at its next stop, it was late afternoon. Spivey woke up and saw a hot dog shop nearby. He felt a sudden hunger. His mother had never bought him a hot dog before. She said they were junk food. Today he was finally out of the way. He ordered himself a super double hot dog. Two police officers approached. They were holding a missing person notice about him. Spivey turned his head away, and in his mind he said, "I can't be seen." I didn't think the police had seen him, but the owner knew that the police were looking for the kid in front of him. But after all, the notice didn't say how much to pay. I might as well sell an extra hot dog. Back on the train, Spivey had a good meal, but after he'd finished feeding himself, and then came an endless feeling of loneliness. He began to miss home. He missed his mother and father, and his brother who had been killed by accident. He shed tears. He slept through the night. The next day, the train arrived in Washington, D.C., without incident. Spivey carried his heavy suitcase. He felt like he was having a hard time getting around, so he found an electric box, taking only some of his belongings, and hid the rest in the box. When a police car came along, he thought the kid was still damaging public property. He wanted to take him back to the station for tea. Spivey ran off in a frenzy. The police chased after him. The two men came to a broken bridge, one after the other. The gates were opened just in time, stopping Spivey in his tracks. The policeman, panting and laughing, said,
"S'arrêtez là. Merci pour l'exercice, mais là..."
Spivey jumped straight through, hanging his hands on the railing. The policeman was in tears at the sight.
Nom de Dieu, regarde pas en bas. Regarde pas en bas. Pose le pied, allez. Allez, petit, pose le pied.
Seeing Spivey's feet find their footing, the policeman finally relaxed, waiting for the broken bridge to come alongside. He climbed up without difficulty, but the dangerous move he had just made, his ribs were badly bruised. Spivey dragged his exhausted body along the road for half a day. Finally, he stopped an Optimus. The kindly driver saw how badly he was hurt. He asked if he wanted a ride to the hospital, but Spivey refused. He just wanted to collect his prize and get home as soon as possible. After a long night's drive, the car finally arrived at the Smithsonian. This was Spivey's destination. After bidding farewell to the kindly driver, Spivey went to the front desk of the college. He said he was here to collect his Baird Award. He asked for the dean of the college by name. When she saw Spivey, she couldn't believe that the inventor of the perpetual motion machine was a 10-year-old boy invents a perpetual motion machine, and won the prestigious Baird Award. But when he came to the Smithsonian to receive his prize, the dean of women didn't believe. This great invention was the work of a child, but Spivey said calmly,
"J'ai fait que transposer le principe de l'électron qui orbite autour du noyau. Mais comme vous le savez, pour créer un véritable mouvement perpétuel, il faudrait être capable d'inverser l'entropie."
Hearing Spivey speak so expertly, the dean of women had to believe it too. She took Spivey to have his brain tested. The results were even higher than hers, and that's when she saw the opportunity. The hype about the Spider Prize began immediately. The award ceremony was attended by some of the biggest names in academia. It made his Smithsonian reputation. The more she saw of Spivey, the more she was delighted. But Spivey had gone to great lengths to get here. But Spivey had come all this way with a purpose. When he took the podium to speak, he made it clear that there were three things he wanted to say. Firstly, thank you all for not canceling the award because of his young age. Secondly, his perpetual motion machine uses the principle of the electromagnetic wheel. When the magnetism wears off in 400 years, the machine will stop working. So there's still a long way to go before man can create a true perpetual motion machine. There's still a long way to go. After saying these two things, Spivey hesitated for a long time before speaking again.
Mon frère est mort cette année.
No one in the room could figure out why this was being brought up at an award ceremony, but that's what Spivey was really here for. He wanted to tell his biggest grievance in the best possible moment. He said he'd been a researcher since he was a kid. His brother, however, was only interested in guns, so that he could play with his brother. So he came up with the idea of creating a gunshot wave map, but the shotgun suddenly blew up in the process. His brother was accidentally killed. His parents kept quiet about it. By default, he was the one who killed his brother. He took this opportunity to tell them today. I hope that his parents will know the truth of the matter, so that they can understand him. The sincerity sincerity of Spivey's character. It touched everyone in the room, and the Dean of Women was even more sure that Spivey was her moneymaker. He was then given interviews, lectures, but Spivey felt even lonelier about it. He had only come here to get his parents' approval, but his phone calls to his family were never answered. Until this day, he was on a quiz show, when the host asked him, "You killed your own brother. Was it hard to feel bad?" Spivey was at a loss for words, and that's when Mom came out from backstage. This was completely unexpected for Spivey. Seeing that his mother had traveled thousands of kilometers to get here, he sheepishly apologized to his mother. For whatever reason, he had been wrong to run away from home, but she didn't blame him. Instead, she said, "Is it right to give a gun to a child as a toy? Letting a child shoot and play alone, is that right?" The mother told Spivey it wasn't his fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was just an accident. And then Spivey realized it wasn't that his parents didn't love him. It was that they too lived with a deep sense of remorse. They blamed themselves for not protecting their child. They didn't give their child enough love. The guilt they felt was even greater than the guilt they felt. In fact, the parents' hearts are more painful. With all this in mind, Spivey asked his mother to take him home. He didn't want to stay here any longer, but the host came out after them and stopped them. He said the show was still on. They couldn't leave. That's when his father appeared out of nowhere. He punched him in the face. Then he knelt down on the ground, gesturing for his son to climb onto his shoulders. That was the moment the barrier between the family disappeared. Often there is a lack of communication between parents and children. Parents think their children are still young. They don't understand many things even if they talk about them. It's better not to say anything, but the child feels that even if he or she speaks, parents may not listen. As time goes by, a generation gap is created. In fact, as long as both parties are willing to listen to each other carefully, love is actually very simple.